second episode of Second Contact. I'm Liam Sketcher, and once again I'm joined by Mark Lebedew. Mark, what is today's game?
Well, hi everybody. Today's game is the preview maybe of episode 1. So it's the quarterfinal match between Italy and Netherlands from the same 1992 Olympic tournament.
And an absolutely cracking game, a 5-setter with ups and downs and a big exciting finish. What was some of you touched on it's the preview to what happened later on. What else was happening in the volleyball world around these two teams at that point in time?
Well, it was we briefly mentioned it earlier in episode 1 that Italy was the big favourite for the tournament. They were top of the group in their side of the draw. They won all the matches. They were not maybe completely convincing, but certainly more convincing than the Netherlands, who were 4th in their group. They lost easily to Cuba, USA on that side of the draw. So it was a surprise. It was a matchup 4th against 1st. Italy had dominated World League that year. Also, Netherlands squeezed into the Final Four. So Italy were the really big favourites coming into this match, and it was maybe it's one of the biggest surprises in Olympic history how this match turned out.
The format of international volleyball in the early to mid-90s was a little bit different to what we see today.
Yeah, this 92 and actually 96, the Olympics were relatively early in the European summer, Northern Hemisphere summer. So the first part of World League was played before the Olympics, and the finals were played afterwards. Italy dominated the first part of World League, and they dominated the finals, winning the semi-final and the final easily. Netherlands sort of more or less stumbled through, and the only exception to that was this 4 or 5 day run during the Olympics.
And when you look at this Italian team, there's a huge number of notable names. And one thing that jumped out for me was a very fresh-faced young Gianni. He's looks like he's barely out of his teens, may not have shaved yet, but there's some stars on the court.
Well, the Italians call this the generazione di fenomeni, the phenomenal generation, and from the first player to the 12th player, they're all big stars in their own right. And Gianni was just 22, I think, during this tournament. He actually played in the 88 Olympics, so it was his second Olympics, despite his young age. But he's coming off the bench. Marco Bracci is coming off the bench. There's Toffoli and Bullo. That's the notable part of this Italian team is the presence of Fabio Bullo. He is still considered to be the best Italian setter of that era, sort of the mid to late 80s all the way through almost to 2000. But for various reasons, he didn't play in the national team under Velasco, even though they worked together in the club in Modena and won several championships. So 92, he came back to the team and had a competition with Toffoli as to who should play the most. Mostly Toffoli started, as he did in this match, but Bullo ended up playing all the significant parts of the match. The lineup for the Dutch, we saw them in episode 1 in the final. Obviously, in this match they start with Blondet, but otherwise it's the same team. But the player who has a much more significant part in this game is Olaf van der Merlen, the opposite, who comes in and has the last 3 sets he hits at 95%. And if volleyball was famous, this might be called the Olaf van der Merlen game even.
Absolutely. If you're looking at the numbers that he put up, it's a question that you raised in episode 1. Why didn't he play more in the final? because this performance was exceptional from him.
It seems like they have a better balance somehow with him. With Baldry, they have some combinations. Baldry plays some first tempo, but with Van der Merlen, he's just a straight out opposite. Give him all the difficult balls, just let him bang away. And in this match, he did, and with with fairly good results.
One player that from the Italian side that was recognizable by me, but not for his appearance on the court. For people closer to my experience with volleyball, Lucky Luqueta. It was strange to see him without the glasses, without the hair on the angle, but just a big personality. He's a force out there on the court.
He was the real leader of that team, and even at the time, he had the funny haircuts. In this tournament, he didn't have the angle flat top, but he certainly did in his playing time. Now he's a well-known commentator and famous for being a big personality. I don't know what the equivalent would be, but he was the leader of this team, and this was his last tournament, and he didn't go out for sure the way that he wanted to.
Now, from the video that we're working from, we do miss a bit of the start of the game, but the information that comes through is that the Netherlands got off to a pretty hot start in this one.
Yeah, the commentators that I watched talked about the great start of Netherlands. It ends up being 15-9, and Italy had a couple of points right at the very end. We also don't see the second set, which is much closer, and ends up with, well, the significant action is the not sure about injury in this point, because where the substitution of Peter Blanchet at 12-13. And we can see in the video, the couple of rallies before, he has some problems with his foot. It turns out from our research that it was not an ankle sprain, but plantar fasciitis that caused the problem. And he obviously had to be substituted out. It didn't make any difference in the set, because the next 2 points were an ace to Zorzi and an easy transition play to Italy. But from there, we have the Avatar Selinger show, and we can't say how that may or may not have changed the game, because we don't see how they're playing. Obviously, Netherlands are playing really well up to that point, even if the score is 1-1. It's pretty clear for Italy. They have some stressful moments, and it's one of the things that comes up a little bit during the course of the match, is that they seem to be a little bit tense. Some of the reactions are a little bit over the top to missed opportunities. Some plays from Zorzi, for example, some little looks between Candagali, Gardini, and they feel a little bit stressed all the way through the game. They close out the third set really easily, and seem to be in some sort of a rhythm. But then in the fourth set, they lose all the wheels. They start 0-4. They try everything. Gianni comes in for 2 points, hits one ball out, gets blocked once, gets taken straight out again. They hit balls out. Vullo seems to lose control a lot. There's a stretch where he makes 5 or 6 sets that are really difficult to hit, to score, and culminating in one direct error that he sets outside the antenna. And at 2-2, that sets up the fifth set. Netherlands again start really well. They're 8-5, 11-8 before Luqueta, who you said the dominating personality in that group, gets a one-on-one block in the middle to make it 12-12. And then it's side out until Netherlands wins.
It's a game that has a little bit of everything. You get to see both sides in really dominant form, and then both sides not really be able to keep it together at certain points. But the end is great. One thing that I did notice was Bernardi, who has a reputation as one of the best players of his generation in Italy, really struggled to have an impact on the game. He had some attacks where they were at crucial moments, but overall his performance was not quite what you would expect from someone of his reputation.
Exactly, that's one of the things that I noticed going through the match. He's not a real presence in the game. He doesn't receive very well, even if the Dutch serve mostly to Cantagalli, as they tend to do. He doesn't hit as many balls. He doesn't hit very successfully, and he serves into the net at 14 all in the tiebreak, which seems like an important moment in the match.
Particularly when you see some of the serves around that period of the game. Definitely guys not wanting to make the net fault at that point. There's some what I would just describe as lollipops coming over the net, but this was the function of the rule.
Exactly, and the moon balls other people describe, where the ball clears the net by 6 meters and lands somewhere close to the middle of the court, and Bernardi still managed to hit that serve into the top of the net and dribbled over. But at the time, that's just a straight loss of a point, and Netherlands kept the advantage.
Part of the function of this series is that we talk about how the game has changed. What's different now? What has stayed, or what parts of the game that were being played then have remained part of the game? What are some of the things that jumped out for you when looking at particularly the Italian team?
They have a couple of interesting tactical choices that they have. In the P1, in the setter in position 1, they actually have the receiver, who's in position 2, receive on the left side and attack from position 4, and Zorzi the opposite, and Lucchetta hit some either combination or double quick. It seems a little bit unnecessary to me, considering that in other tournaments before that, Zorzi was just a big gun from position 4, like he was from every other position. And interestingly, at in the 5th set, during the timeout, when Passanato, ironically, is in Zorzi's position, Velasco gives the message normal P1. They set to the opposite in position 4 and get out of that rotation. The other thing that I found really quite odd was the switch blocking that they used in a couple of rotations. So switch blocking is when basically the two blocking players stand behind each other, and the second player it runs around to follow the combination play. And it's also not something that they used winning the World Championships in 1990. Perhaps it was something they pulled out at different times, but it wasn't. It was odd to see and not very effective, as it turned out. So those are the main things, and the third middle for the Netherlands, who comes in, Ron Zuidsma, actually has a nice little slide in transition that we can see from the behind the court view. Looks for all those out there who like to see the old school stuff. Zuidsma was the classic pre-libero middle, really good receiver, really good attacker, maybe not a fantastic blocker, although I sometimes call this period in volleyball the pre-blocking era, watching them jump around and jumping at air and not touching the ball. But yes, he was a good athlete and indeed a gazelle in flight.
So the knock on the Italian teams particularly from the 80s and early 90s was they played a very safe style. to minimize errors, to wait until they got a good opportunity. But this Italian team, they looked very aggressive. They didn't seem to want to recycle or tip the ball too much. They really went for it.
Well, I wondered watching this whether the match or losing this match actually pushed them a little bit more to the conservative side, having the P1 variation, attacking some more balls. It was, I think, Zorzi's style perhaps a little bit differently to Gianni's, and maybe that was also part of the difference there. But in the fourth set, they make a lot of errors, hitting into the block, reception errors, setting error from Bullo. So maybe it's just an off day. The results around the tournament seem to suggest it was, and perhaps it pushed them a little bit into the more conservative way of playing that we see a couple of years later.
When we look at this game, there's quite a few parts that carry over from the previous game we looked at in episode 1. How do we see this game as a representation of the future of volleyball, and how is it different?
Well, in the episode 1, we talked about the players wiping the floor themselves, the difference in the coach's participation in the game. One thing that obviously the most notable feature of this game is the 17-16 tiebreak. So in the 80s, the talk was of making games shorter and more predictable in length, which is the conversation that we will have as long as there's volleyball. And after the 88 Olympics, they included a cap of 17 for the normal set for the first 4 sets, and a tie break. So the tie break started, the rally point system started after the 88 Olympics, and also capped at 17. What they didn't, of course, realize at the time was what a massive advantage it was to be the receiving team under that scoring system. And this is the only really big match that ended this way before they very quickly changed the rule and forgot about it. And so Van der Merlen was the side-out king. He made the side-outs at 12-12, 13-13. Bernardi served in the net at 14-14, then 15-15, and 16-16. Bullo serves right down the middle of the court. The serve that we were talking about before, perfect reception, and Van der Merlen swings away and scores the ball from position 1, and Netherlands wins the game and Italy goes home.
And in the video, you can see there is some discussion between the teams as to the validity of the last swing from Van der Merlen.
Well, I'd heard I don't know if you call it a rumor or a story or a murmur, that the Italians thought that the last ball hit the antenna, and you can see that the Italians are appealing for it, at least most of them. And when the teams come together, Van der Merlen is turning back to the Italians and saying no. So we don't know for sure. They never show a replay from another angle. I'm quietly confident that the Italians are at least pretty sure that it did touch the antenna, and the Dutch.
Yeah, the Dutch, from my sources on this side, the Dutch are absolutely confident that it in no way came close to touching the antenna, but that response came very quickly. There was a small element of defensiveness, I think, in that. So history will have to stay unresolved on that one. We'll have to go with the result that's in the books.
Like the serve under the net in episode 1.
Absolutely. Hopefully we have some people who watched the whole game and found out who that was. We come to the most important part of second contact, where we talk about which team has the coolest uniforms. The Netherlands had a loss in the previous contest between themselves and Brazil, both on the court and in the uniform stakes. But are they going to square the ledger today, Mark?
Well, the Dutch, we did say in episode 1 that the Dutch had very good uniforms, not at the level of their 96 uniforms, which I did a little bit of extra research and discovered that the flames were intended to represent the Olympic flame, and they did still, with the flames, have a lion on the front. So that was later in the future. Now they have the classic stylish design with the lions. Italy, for most of this run, they have the same uniforms, tight fitting, short arms, short legs. And I can remember at the time, me and my friends who had access to these videos would constantly make fun of the Italian style. It was obviously something that they liked, but on the basis of what 20-year-old Mark Lebedew joked about watching these videos the first time, I'm going to have to give the win to the Netherlands.
Yeah, this was a coin toss for me. I do really like the Dutch uniform. I think there's some nice little design touches. But you mentioned the short sleeves. There's in the both Brazilian team and the Dutch team, there were guys playing a mixture of the short and long sleeves. The Italians appear to be all in short sleeves, and
But short is the key.
yeah, shorts. I think purely design-wise, they don't do too much. Maybe the Italia with the red, white, and green on it is a little bit too much. I think it's nice and simple. It's classic, but I'm going to have to agree with you and say the Dutch get a win here. Just being that little bit more forward-thinking with the lion design, and yeah, just respectful length shorts is a big one.
Yes, indeed.
We've had the chance to talk to some people in and around the game. Was there anything in particular that came to your attention that you didn't know about, or was an interesting little fact for you?
Well, the main one is the last point, obviously, that whether or not that one touched the antenna. The presence of Vullo in the team was another one that's come up at various times. He hadn't played national team, as I mentioned before, for 3 or 4 years. He played that summer, and the team seems to be a little bit different. Is not quite as calm that you associate with that group of players, and possibly that's something to do with him. And certainly he never played national team again, despite, as we've said, the being the consensus best setter in Italy for that whole period. So those are the main things. Whether it was the right call to have Vullo in the team, and the antenna.
Absolutely, the antenna. That's one where you see the reaction from the Dutch side. They're adamant and very animated in their denial of any contact with the antenna whatsoever. But there's some other entertaining things, and in volleyball, there's some things which are guaranteed to be funny almost no matter how many times you see them. And in this game, we managed to get 2 of them.
Yeah, we have a couple of six-packs, both against the Italians, which maybe speaks to the game. In episode 1, the big six-pack was against the Dutch. Maybe there's something in that. The mood of the game determines who gets belted. Sadly, we don't get the close-ups that we see of Ron Baudry in episode 1, but we get a couple of we'll call them six-packs.
The one that really entertained me when watching this game was the body language and interaction from the first referee. I thought it was great. He was like a tired school teacher at some points, where the players would come and argue, and even for what seemed like regulation calls, there's just this look of resignation on his face that, are you serious? We're going through this again. So if you get a chance to watch this, have a look, see the reactions of this guy on the stand. I think he calls the game well, but he just looks like he wants to be down at the pub or somewhere else.
he's probably done the maths and worked out if he's got this quarterfinal, he's not getting the final.
That may be it, exactly right.
As you mentioned it, there's as we talk about it, there's one other one, which is the response of Ari Selinger at the end of the match. So obviously it's an emotional time and everybody's jumping around, and Ari Selinger is just sort of walking around in a circle, dazed, as if he'd I don't know, seen an alien landing, or not really sure what to do, where to go, and with a smile on his face, obviously. So perhaps not like if he saw an alien spaceship land, but amusing to watch nonetheless.
What jumps out to you as a big what if from this game?
The biggest what if is the two setters. What happens with the two setters if the Italians had made the decision they made for the previous years and just gone with Toffoli, and probably at that time it was still the Georgie, whether the team would have functioned a little bit differently enough to win one more point in a quarterfinal, because that's what it comes down to. On the other side, what would have happened to the Dutch if Blondet hadn't been forced to be substituted? With Selinger, they have a really good flow with him, but obviously they were winning with Blondet, so it's difficult to know for sure. So that's the big unanswerable question. The other thing, of course, is what would have happened if they hadn't had such a stupid fit set rule? If you'd had to win 2 points in the tiebreak, would Van der Merwe have had another 10 side outs in a row, or what would have happened there? So maybe it would have happened exactly like 4 years later.
Yeah, my what if touches a little bit on the question we had in the first episode, particularly around Van der Merwe, but also with Ron Zwerver, who we saw against Brazil was the dominant player for the Netherlands.
In both directions.
Yeah, correct. If what I have found out is true, when asking about the injury to Blondet, particularly being plantar fasciitis, from what I've been told is that Ron Zwerver as well was suffering from some inflammation there. Could this have been an impact on his performance in this game? And is there potentially something else that could have been done? Does that explain maybe he has less influence now, but they save him a little bit for the final? Does it explain his performance over the end of the tournament as well? Could he be really carrying that injury, and it affects his ability to really shoulder the load offensively for the Netherlands?
You know what we can say about unanswerable questions?
We'll never know.
Word for word, we'll never know.
Well, this is a little wrap up there from the quarterfinal in the 92 Olympics between the Netherlands and Italy. Make sure you take the time to watch the game. The links will be available through the At Home on the Court YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to keep up to date with what we've got coming next on Second Contact. Hopefully we get the format tighter and tighter again. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Second Contact. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Sketch. Peace, everybody. See you next week.